All right, welcome everyone in Canada, worldwide, and Ontario, as today is when the writ drops in the election. Will it be Fat Trudeau, Bald Wannabe Trudeau, Kathleen Wynne, NDP lady who's the same as Balding Trudeau guy, or will it be someone cool? That is what Ontario will have to decide. So, the reason why Ontario politics is really important, and I know you hate it, all right, and I hate it too, and I hate, the idiots who run this place, but what happens in Ontario, the winners and losers in Ontario end up seeping into the national parties and dictating national, how Ontario goes, shapes the face of Canadian politics 5 years down the road. All the morons in Kathleen Wynne's cabinet and inner circle who created all the bad ideas that destroyed Ontario, that led us to getting Doug Ford back in the day, all of them went into the Trudeau Liberal government federally and are doing the same things federally in Canada that caused Ontario to collapse in 10 years. We're almost there. We're a few years away before the Canadian public realizes how damaging Justin Trudeau's policies have been and votes against them. That was the same cycle that panned out in Ontario as between Dalton McGuinty and Kathleen Wynne. It took around 10 years for Ontarians to realize just how crazy and stupid their policies are. Which brings us to Fat Trudeau, also known as Doug Ford. Doug Ford came in a sort of whirlwind circumstances. The year is 2018, and the Me Too movement is at a high. The Conservatives had a leader. This was very much like the O'Toole federal race. It was the O'Toole before O'Toole happened. See, what happens in Ontario, that happens in the rest of the country. In Ontario, it was Patrick Brown. He did the exact same thing O'Toole did nationally with the exact same team around him. He came in the primaries being, I'm the conservative, talked about his Christian roots and, talked about, I'm going to be tough on this and this and that against the carbon tax, blah, 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 blah. I'm a conservative. You can trust me. I'll pray with you. Then he gets the thing, immediately takes a knife into the backs of the Socons. They're dirty, unwashed people. I hate them. They're stupid. Then he did all that. He would go to his things and he'd say, listen, we can't talk about conservative ideas because the CBC will get mad at us. Now, there's a large contingent of conservatives who started to not like Patrick Brown because we had felt stabbed in the back by him because he was explicitly stabbing us in the back, and he had an outright disdain for the Conservative Party and the Conservative base, yet he was lenient. So when a random girl who looked like CTV had to apologize because it didn't do due diligence, basically her story was, I was 19 and I went on with Patrick Brown, and then, he kissed me and I didn't like it, so I asked him to take me home and he did. So nothing illegal happened that way. It shows that, Patrick Brown has a thing for young women, which I find creepy. I'm younger than Patrick Brown was now. I'm 30, but I still would never, try and hook up with an 18-year-old girl. That's just weird. They're older than my cousin. It's weird, right? It's just weird. That's what you should think about Patrick Brown. That was weird. That wasn't criminal. Shouldn't lose his job, but he did. Because all the cowards around him was listen, we can never push back against the media. The one thing we cannot do as a Conservative Party is push back and fight for our values. Then someone's fells me too. All the people he told that our job is to be cowards and backstab, well, they did the cowardly thing and backstabbed him. Ha 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 ha. Now, Doug Ford then rose out of that because there was a very radical all the precursors to this sex ed stuff, this is Ontario, circa 2015, and the Liberals' radical sex ed program that was literally created by a convicted pedophile. Now, the Liberals wanted to push this. I read through the sex ed thing. The problem with the sex ed thing is it's communism. It institutes communist dodgeball and leaves the floor open for all this critical race theory nonsense. A lot of the crazy sexual stuff is actually not in the general sex ed thing. It's in Lincoln's and ancillary materials. But the general thing leaves it open for ancillary materials. Blah, 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 blah. You get the point. So, Doug Ford gets in. He's supported by Tanya Granick-Allen at the time, who shifts her, Socon support to him. He gets to shake hands with Charles McVety, evangelical, and boom, he beats Christine Elliott, becomes the next premier. And Doug Ford comes in with the promise of being Rob Ford's brother, and Rob Ford was dope. Yes, he was high on crack and drunk all the time. That was his best quality. I wish that Doug Ford would smoke more crack and drink a lot more. That way he wouldn't be doing things. He would be high on crack and doing nothing, like his brother, who left the city in a surplus of billions because he didn't spend our money on stupid bullshit because he was drunk all the time and smoking crack and kicking footballs and falling down. He was the greatest mayor of any city of all time. God bless Rob Ford. Now, Doug came in promising to be conservative, and we thought, hey, there's some gusto here. He got huge support from the minority community because the left was insane and he was less insane. He did the Ford Fest, the Ford Nation thing for the people. Hey, buddy, I'm going to take, I'm going to do the Doug Ford thing. My brother Rob took away a license plate tax. I'll cut these stupid taxes, pick fights with some bureaucrats, and then leave you alone. That's what we voted for Doug Ford on. That was the Doug Ford promise. Repeal some stupid taxes, pick fights with bureaucrats that don't matter, and then do nothing. Hopefully, get high on drugs. I can only hope that all our politicians get a lot higher on the right drugs, the ones that completely mentally incapacitate them so they can't do anything else. But Doug Ford failed to get addicted to drugs. Shame on him. But even worse, yes, he started this fight with the teachers, but I always remember that he came in, and even before COVID, his thing was, they're cutting education. He had his MPPs out there saying, no, we're actually increasing spending. We've increased spending massively. This is why Ontario is so important. Kathleen Wynne and the Liberals, just like the Liberals, blew out the budget. Ontario's broke. We don't have any money. Before Doug Ford came, we had no money. We sold off all our assets at Hydro. We sold off all our assets in the Liberals were so financially irresponsible. They sold off all of our assets in their final year of power just to say in the final year they balanced their budget. But then they spent so much friggin' money that even after we sold off all our assets, we still managed to be in a deficit that year. So they couldn't use that as a political club against Doug Ford. That's how bad a situation we were in financially. Doug Ford comes in, says buck a beer. Okay, whatever. The real thing was price control. Who cares? We do have buck a beer, but it's non-alcoholic, and so who cares? Non-alcoholic beer isn't beer. The real thing, though, is we had a danger of the philosophy of the left and the tax and spend policies and the magical green thinking and paying for things we know are bad, but putting on a credit card and deferring it later and accumulating crazy debt. That is the problem of the Wynne Liberals. The Liberals, prior to the Justin Trudeau era, prior to the 21st century in Canada, were actually pretty reasonable. Jean Chrétien balanced a few budgets. That was sort of the rep in Canada, is a moderate left. They understood economic realities, but, they were a bit more pro-this, and they had a pro-choice bound to them, and they'd, be the defenders of whatever, right? That was their thing, and that was a happy equilibrium for everyone. Not so much anymore. The problem with Doug Ford, and a lot of people, is Doug Ford fully embraces the new, dangerous, radical left in every single aspect of governance. Every single one. He didn't repeal the radical sex ed, so back down on that, let them have that. Didn't go after the windmills or the wind farms, just let them have that. The same green energy nonsense, it's a 25-minute rant when we go off the windmills, but he didn't do that. Jim Calaharos hates the windmills like I do. Vote New Blue. Now, he didn't go after the green energy nonsense, the crazy spending. He's spending more than the Wynne Liberals. Bigger, crazier budgets. He's pushing the bar up. This is why it is better to have Stephen Del Duca or Andrea Horwath or a coalition in power in Ontario than it is to have another term of Doug Ford if you're a conservative. The argument Doug Ford's people will be making is a fallacious one. They're going to be arguing, somewhat correctly, Stephen Del Duca is insane. Andrea Horwath is insane. Look how insane these people are. They want to do this to your kids. They want to do this. They have radical, dangerous views that will destroy the fabric of society and the economy. That is true. You know who also holds those very same views? Doug Ford. Or if he doesn't hold them, he's willing to implement them to be friends with Justin Trudeau. Back in the 2019 federal election, Doug Ford was anathema to the Conservative Party because he was too conservative, or perceived that way. It was a mistake what Andrew Scheer did, ignoring Doug Ford. Because Doug Ford was the punching bag of Justin Trudeau in 2019. He was a scare tactic. Oh, you want the country to be like Doug Ford? Oh, you want to be like Doug Ford? The Americans will make fun of us if we're Doug Ford. Doug Ford, Donald Trump, Doug Ford, Donald Trump, Trump Ford, Doug, Ford, Trump. That was Justin Trudeau in 2019. And the media played along. Doug Ford, the Trump, the bad. That was an actual imitation of Andrew Coyne in 2019. To the letter. It's verbatim. No sarcasm. Then, in the most recent election, 2021, all of a sudden, Doug Ford and Justin Trudeau, BFFs. Best friends forever. It's Trudeau and a fatter version of himself. Best friends, Doug and Justin, going around, taking your civil liberties, get in the concentration camp. Sorry, did we say that? They're really re-education camps for people spreading disinformation, which is really dangerous on the internet. You're going to jail, the new Canada. That was the theme song that plays every morning in Ontario. You don't need to check it if you're not there. That's the reason why I know that song. Every morning in Ontario, since COVID has happened, 2 months into COVID, when you wake up, that song starts playing about Justin Trudeau and Doug Ford being best friends forever, taking away your civil liberties, doing all the nonsense. The reason why it would be better to have the Conservatives in opposition from a conservative point of view is because at least they will make noise and push back when the left does something. Because that's the job of the opposition, is to make noise and complain. So the Liberals will know that if we do crazy radical left stuff, there's a party that will point it out and complain to people and try and shed light onto it. Whereas the Conservative Party now can do all that crazy radical left-wing nonsense and there's no one to shine light of it. Or so they thought. Enter in Belinda Kalaharos, the only real conservative alternative in the Ontario election. So the writ drops today, which means the election officially started. The only reason that Doug Ford was not able to institute critical race theory in schools was because of Belinda Kalaharos and the New Blue Party, who are polling quite well over 10% in the sort of Southwest Ontario area. That's the Kitchener-Waterloo, which they look like they might be able to get some seats there. So it's not like if you are Kitchener-Waterloo, Cambridge area, and you think, well, what's the use? Actually, the New Blue Party does have a significant shot there. But to back it up further, the only reason why critical race theory was stopped is because there was an opposition Conservative Party, the New Blue Party, the only ones. Rick Nichols in the Ontario Party. Rick Nichols is a joke. He voted for critical race theory. His original thing was he didn't read the bill, which was 6 pages, had equity in the title, equity 50 times, and proposed that teachers, in order to teach in Ontario, would have to take anti-racism training. Good. Social engineering. What could go wrong? So he then did that. Then Derek Sloan came out and said, no, this is propaganda, calling Rick Nichols lazy. He actually tried to read the bill and he couldn't. So Derek Sloan, Rick Nichols, I'm not sure Rick Nichols is actually on this. So the prevailing story from the Ontario Party is either Rick Nichols is too lazy to read or does not know how to read, or has such terrible reading comprehension that he can look at words but doesn't understand what they mean. One of those is apparently the truth. Instead, there might be a fourth alternative that the Ontario Party is just a fake, fabrication to suck away momentum from a real grassroots party, which is the truth. Now, you have the Fords. The PC Fords, which are running off of their sort of big daddy COVID authoritarianism. They're running on the... Now, this is going to hurt them, but the only reason Doug Ford can get reelected is Stephen Del Duca and Andrew Horwath. So that's the Liberals and the NDP. The Green Party does not matter. What the Liberals and the NDP have done is they've failed to draw any meaningful distinction. The NDP could have gained a lot of vote. There's a lot of left-wing anti-COVID authoritarianism out there. You know, the NDP could have siphoned off some of his vote by saying mandates hurt BIPOC people and workers have the right to choose, union right. Like, they could have done that noise. But instead they embraced the radical screaming leftists that, any civil liberties is a danger and you always have to go crazier and more authoritarian on COVID policies. That's what Stephen Del Duca did. Stephen Del Duca is like, well, if you're not wearing a mask in your own bathtub, then you're a murderer. This is basically his campaign slogan. Liberals, if you're not wearing a mask in your bathtub, you are a murderer. But, unfortunately, what Stephen Del Duca is doing is he is Doug Ford's number one campaign boon. So working hardly, the hardest working person to get Doug Ford reelected in Ontario is Stephen Del Duca, the Liberal leader, who is going around making Doug Ford look sane by comparison and pushing the lie that Doug Ford actually pushed back against any COVID rules. It's a lie. Stephen Del Duca is pushing misinformation. Doug Ford does not care about civil liberties. Stop pretending that Doug Ford is a person with a conscience, Stephen. It is not helping your cause. Right? But instead, Stephen's trying to say, he's basically trying to win the David Fishman vote. Which, fine. There's a bunch of people who just brains have been broken by Trump and COVID. And I guess they'll vote Liberal. Because they're broken people with broken brains. But fine. But I think the majority of people still kind of want to be out of this and kind of want to be done with it. And they're allowing Doug Ford to sort of play these sort of, well, I think we're done here, folks. I'll get you out of it. No, everything we hear is it looks like it'll be done this summer, but Doug Ford is right to reinstitute draconian COVID rules in the fall and push some digital ID and stuff from what we are hearing. So look for in the fall for Doug Ford to win. So Doug Ford is likely going to win re-election because the Liberals are idiots, the NDP are lunatics, the Green Party is not real, the Ontario Party is not real, and New Blue looks like it might be able to maintain some seats. So the real question for the election is, will there be an official Conservative opposition? Or will there be anyone in Parliament to oppose? The only reason why we know about a lot of the COVID nonsense and the critical race theory stuff and Bill 100 and all the crazy authoritarian stuff that Doug Ford is doing, the only reason we know about it is because of Belinda Kalahara's place in the legislature and the job she and New Blue does to email out everyone on the email list and get people focused on this stuff. The reason why it's important to keep her in there is because you need an actual bulwark against this nonsense. And the way Canada goes, you can sniff your nose from Saskatchewan, Alberta, and I accept the nose sniffing. I do get it. You're rightfully dismissive of us idiots here in Ontario. I'm not saying you're wrong, but what I am saying, though, is what gets instituted in Ontario does carry over federally within a couple of years, because that's how we work. It's justified in Ontario and then used as the Ontario institution to justify instituting it federally or in your province. So Doug Ford's Bill 100, where if he gives the police the right to just seize your property, the anti-trucker protest law, basically saying anyone who protests the government, again, in a way that hurts the narrative, you can Mayday and smash windows if you're a commie all you want. We don't care about that. But if you protest for freedom against the current narrative, well, then we have the right to just take your entire property away. Screw your civil liberties. That's now provincial law in Ontario. That's going to be federal law. It's going to be federal law. It will be the law in your province. This isn't America, where California does something crazy, and Florida can say, well, that's insane, and Tennessee would be like, yeah, bro, that's not going to happen here. That's not how it works. Canada is a place where if New York institutes a law, 3 years later, that's the law in Mississippi. That's Canada. It's coming to you. So the only hope that any Conservative movement has in Ontario is the New Blue Party, which is started by Jim and Belinda and has actually been fighting against all this stuff. You know the New Blue Party is a real party because the Conservative Party, the media, are doing everything they can to prop up the Ontario Party, which is a fake vanity project done by Derek Sloan, who decided not to run in his riding, even though he was tied in the polls, then bolted to Alberta to help out the Conservative Party there by undermining the PPC to start his own federal party, the True North Party, still not officially a party and registered, then raised all the money to do True North, then came back to Ontario, now he started the Ontario Party. So where's his federal party? Why was he out in Alberta? Now he's back in Ontario doing the thing. And Derek Sloan's so obvious. Oh, God, I hate this. I hate what Derek Sloan's doing because it's such an obvious grift to the lowest denomination. Like, I hate the fake Socon nonsense. Like, I don't mind the Socons. I talk about politicians who pretend to be like hardcore Christian conservatives, who they're not. Like when Derek Sloan's bringing in Roger Stone, so his campaign's paying money for Roger Stone, who's in Mar-a-Lago hanging out with Trump, doesn't give one lick about Ontario politics. But they're paying Derek Sloan, and Derek Sloan's advertising like, I know Roger, he said this, did all this, and he's a born-again Christian now. It's like, Roger Stone's a party boy. He's not a born-again Christian, okay? And you're not a born-again Christian, Derek. You're a Seventh-day Evangelist. Which, again, I don't have a problem with any of those things. But, like, you're a believing Seventh-day Evangelist. I know this. You're a vegetarian. I know this. I know people who know you. You're like a hardcore Seventh-day Evangelist. That's fine. That's not a criticism. It's cool. Just be that. But don't be that and pretend to be a born-again, just Christian. It's not who you are, right? And I get it. It's to grift Christians into backing your party. But it's dishonest. Not very Christian-like either. Right? You also have the thing where I'm going to fight the World Economic Forum. Shut up. Shut up. You don't even know what it is. You don't even understand these things. Right? He's running against the World Economic Forum, which is just a way to gain Twitter followers and become a cult thing and get this very hardcore group of followers because he's the only one talking about these super fringe issues that will never win in a general election, but it's super fringe and he'll be the only one yelling at the World Economic Forum, so he's the only real good guy, blah, 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 so he can continue to grift money off you, and the next thing you do will also be a political grift, blah, 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 blah. All right, so that's Ontario politics. So, again, It looks like Doug Ford, as it sits now, the Conservatives are looking like they will win because they have the incumbent thing, and the Liberals and the NDP are trying to portray themselves as more insane than Doug Ford and trying to paint Doug Ford as reasonable, which he never has been. But again, it's only the Liberals and the NDP that will prop him back up. So that is what you need to know about Ontario politics. It looks grim. If New Blue Party does get seats, it does open up it does make federal politics and Canadian politics much more interesting, because this is huge for the PPC if New Blue can actually pull in a few seats. It provides a blueprint of what the PPC needs to do to be a real party. Maxime Bernier, do your homework, build some EDAs like New Blue is doing, and maybe you'll get 10-15% of the vote in certain ridings, and maybe you could push it up to 20% eventually and eke out a seat here and there, gain a foothold in Parliament, and then Bob's your uncle, you're off and running. But I digress. So it's that time. It's the worst of the CBC for May 4th, 2022, the show where I watch the CBC so you don't have to. And today on the National, last night's the National, 18 and a half minutes of a 45-minute block was set to what topic? Abortion in America. Yes, the most important topic in all of Canada. American abortion debate. Now, I won't give my opinions on abortion here. Instead, I have set up a Twitter space for tonight, which I will be hosting after the hockey game ends. Now, my problem with abortion in Canada is the abortion debate sucks. The debate is broken. The pro-choice side is insane. As I cover, the media is insane. So, what I am promising to do is I have looked at the discourse in Canada about abortion, and I have seen it's so toxic and unproductive. How can I possibly make it worse? And that's what I've decided to do. I, the hero I am, have decided to do the only thing I know how. Make the abortion debate so toxic that everyone else gets equally sick of it as I am, and then go that way. So what I will be doing is after the hockey game ends, because that's the only time we're allowed to talk about women's rights, it will be a conversation for men, by men, about abortion. No women are allowed to talk and give their input. I'm sorry, women, it's time to listen to men. Now, is this a good idea? No, it's not. Obviously, it's a bad idea. But I am basing it on the logic of Canadian law and political discourse. Okay, so Justin Trudeau has said that men shouldn't talk about abortion and got a standing ovation. It has been a political talking point that men shouldn't be allowed to have opinions on abortion. Fine, if that's a logic that some people can have opinions on abortion. But it's also Canadian law to believe everything the LGBTQ thing and gender equity and gender expression. It is law that you must believe that trans women are women and that men can get pregnant. So if men can get pregnant, then men can get pregnant, and then we can talk about abortion. Now, I am hosting this because in order to defeat my men-only space about abortion, you will have to come to a few different conclusions. One, you would have to say, well, men can't get pregnant, and then win-win. Two, you might have to say, hey, this is ridiculous. You can't have a situation where only men can give an opinion on something. It's ridiculous to exclude all women from, having an opinion on something, which, great, yeah, let's flip that both ways. Or three, you'll have to then say, you know what? It's pretty easy to determine who's a man and a woman here, right? You don't need a biology degree, as the Supreme Court Justice Kajita Brown Jackson insisted, to know who is a woman and who is a man. So again, overnight, everyone in the country has gained a biology degree. It is quite a fascinating, and it's probably the greatest educational advancement in all of American history, as overnight 300 million more biologists were created. So, is this going to be the space that solves the abortion debate? Yes, it is. All the boys are coming together. Join me after the Leaf game ends tonight on Twitter, and we'll talk about the abortion debate, and we'll fix it for the women. If you have an opinion, again, who is most affected by the abortion debate and abortion laws in America? Obviously, Canadian men. So this space is dedicated to all the virtue signaling Canadian men who are putting up tweets like, oh, women, friends in America are so scared, you can come here for your abortions. They're not going to sleep with you. They're not going to sleep with you. I know what you're trying to do, guys, but the random women in America are not going to read their Twitter feed, see you post something that is pro-choice, come over, fly to Canada, and start humping you. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. But in honor of your great sacrifice, you can come to our Twitter space. And because you are a man, you can do the thing. You can give your opinion. You can yell at me and call me all these different names. Fine. Do it. As a man, it is your right to engage in this Twitter space and solve abortion for the ladies, because it's time for the boys to take this one on. Now, obviously this is nonsense, but in order to say it's nonsense is a bad idea, you have to go against the general law in Canada, which is gender theory, and Justin Trudeau's political rhetoric, which is only women can talk about X. Right? If there's no men involved in the space, then men can't talk about it, which is silly. It's like saying women can't talk about NFL. It's like saying women can't talk about the NFL because there's no women playing in the NFL, and there never will be. But Mina Kimes is allowed to talk about the NFL. Why is that? Well, because she has insight that adds to your viewing pleasure. That's how she got her job. I actually find her an engaging analyst who has a bit of a personality. Yes, sometimes it gets into some leftism and stuff. Who doesn't do that in ESPN? Grand scheme of things, she's fine. Better than a lot of the men on the thing. Don't have to be an ex-NFL player to do it. But if we use the logic that because men don't get abortions, which they don't, right? Because abortion is a women's issue, which I think it's more of a societal issue. But if you want to go with it's a women's issue, you then have to say that, one, I know exactly, I know exactly what a man is and what a woman is, and I can distinguish between them. And the sort of excluding people based on their gender from a conversation is ridiculous. So, that being said, I will be kamikazing the entire abortion debate. I will be hosting a men only, for the boys, Twitter space to discuss the future of abortion in America from the people who are affected the most, which is men in Canada. All right. Now, that being said, why am I doing this? Because the CBC just sucks. It just sucks. They're going there, and I love the thing where they're like, some pro-choice protesters and anti-abortion protesters. I liked how Wyatt was very open, like he's not pro-life, he's more anti-abortion, which is fair. But, I mean, the pro-choice people are pro-abortion. Shouldn't they call them pro-abortion? It's pro-abortion and anti-abortion. Like, if you're going to do it coverage, like, be pro-abortion and anti-abortion, not pro-choice, pro-abortion. Pro-choice, anti-abortion. It's either pro-choice, pro-life, or pro-abortion, anti-abortion if you're going to do that dichotomy. But, no, they do it as dishonorably as they can. Now, this all being said, 18 and a half minutes of a 45-minute Canadian thing is on abortion. This is mind-numbing. And none of it good. None of it good. No talk about how the leaker threatened democracy. No, they gave way more time to pro-choice people. No, yes, they had pro-life people on, but they never really were able to make a point. I hate this thing where they said abortion is a constitutional right. Abortion is not a constitutional right. Nowhere in the Constitution does it say abortion, right? It just, everything, if you've seen, everything is slanted and misleading, and I hate it. And that's why, because the abortion debate is so toxic, I am doing the honorable thing. The only thing I know how is take a toxic debate and make it even worse. So join me tonight after the hockey game ends. And boys, we'll fix it. We'll get to the bottom of it. We'll find a happy solution that makes everyone content with our new abortion laws, which become the law of the land. Because ladies, it's time to listen, okay? It's time to listen and respect us as penis-having people. So sit down as, whatever it is, frontal-having, birthing parents, and it's time to listen to men.